sikuti so kapena pamepo ndikuona chithandizo kuti chikhala ikiyayi khaya boma likatithandiza kapena tili pa umphawi waukuluko basi boma litiganizire asatitaye iya tingona ndege zikumapita muja iyi zagwesa ujeni ufa basi zasika kwabona kuphalombeku asisako ufa mamaji iyi ati asisatu kwakuja sotifeta tani tala kwa chani atithandize nafe basi kuno kwa Maguli tazuzika
mavuto amene tikukumana nawo kwambiri ndi a matenda asungu komanso nkhani za mpherezi ena ndi ena zilonda zamba kumatuluka timafuna abe achipatawo atabwera kuti azatipase mankhwala eya komanso ngati bezokhoza zina zozitetezera monga ngati ka kololini komanso kwambiri maneti nkhani ya uzuzu.
Koma pamene thandizo likubwera pang'ono kwa anthuwa iwo ati chakudya mbewu komanso malo okhala ndi thandizo lenileni lomwe akufuna kuti abwezeretse miyoyo yawo mwakale.
Atithandize kutikozerase umenewu komanso anthu akufuna kwabwino pamodzi ndi boma atithandize kwa anthu amene akhuzidwa ndi ngozi ya Fred kuti kutapezeka zinthu ngati malona matenti anthu amenewa azithaso kukhala moyo wawo uzipitirira komanso mbewu atezo kutithandiza mwinaso fetereza kuti anthu athe kulima ndi kubwezesa zimene zaonongeka komanso ngati pali ena amene angathe kugawa ziweto kamwina nkhuku mbuzi kapenanso ngakhale ng'ombe abwere azagawire anthu kuti zimene zaonongekazo zibwezesedwe komanso tikupempha kuti azathu akuboma asatisiyeso chifukwa chonena kuti njala iyi ikhala ngati yankusanjikizana chifukwa pali anthu amene amandi athandizo dera lino komanso kupeza kuti chima ngati chakwiririka ndiye kunoko kuli njala yayikulu ngati pangapezeke lilifi akhozanso ku anthu kulembedwa kuti azithandizidwa mwezi ndi mwezi.
Zithandizo zambiri zofuna kuti zithandize ngati kumanga manyumba olimba kwa anthu amene manyumba agweredwa manyumba adotesa kugwira china chilichonse ndimene azachitikira muchonchi koma nkhani yayikulu ndiona kuti maboma kapena mabungwe ndifuna kuti atithandize zofunikira kuchita ngati kufetereza mbewu ina iliyonse yokhuza kuti ife mwina tipulumuke kuchoka ku 2023 kufika 2024.
Pamene sabata komanso miyezi ikupita chichitikireni ngozi ya namondwe wa Fred kuzomba anthu okhudzidwa lero akukhala okha kudzithandiza okha komanso kuyang'ana kunjira kuti thandizo lichokera pati. Mabungwe monga Catholic Development Commission for Malawi CADECOM akhala kuthandizapo anthu akwa mfumu yaikulu mwambo popereka chakudya zofunda komanso katundu wina pofuna kutengapo gawo pa miyoyo yawo koma kwa anthu okhudzidwa monga Gogoneli iwo maso awo ali kunjira kufuna kudziwa kuti tsogolo lawo lagona pati.
Mangola maze ndikupempha boma chonde ndiveni chisoni tithandizeni tazuzika kuno kwa Maguli ndege tingona mwamba chithandizo tingomvera mwanthu kuti kwakuti athandizidwa kwathu kuno ata sopano tizidi adote poti zimanga zimene zapita.
Basi kama kulokosa mjana ndicho ndio kulia.
Mama mene rapa siba. Ndi malo ndi ya chenga.
Mwana amakuyankhulira mapenati kunena kuti ndili ndi ufulu wanga kuvala zomwe ndikutani ndikufuna mulibe chikhalidwe chakuti mungandani mungandidzudzula maso apo olowera.
Ndipo bakhala ndingakudziza kuti labari pasipobere muzaina kali.
Kati alibe chimene ndaphula ine chimene mukundionera mu.
Njala okwana 4 chikhendi chikhulupiriro poona anthu ena akulandira mumu.
Give Directly is sending families on the front lines of the climate crisis in Malawi $800 each, no strings attached. It works because they know what they need to survive.
Anthu panopo ali wise kufuna kulandira ndalama ndicho linga akonze pakupa.
Give Direct has been giving the communities the opportunity and the freedom to decide what they want.
And payments are timed so recipients can spend on farming needs.
Ndama utakhala nayo kwanira uli ndi njigo uli ndi chitsime uli mutauteka chifukwa wani upeza mapampu uyendesa munda mwakomo ulumikiza kunjigo komene amapangira luso lawo uzithirira munda.
Alangizana tiphusa kuti tizisala chimanga cho cha nsanga inatha mwezi umozi kuyamba kuchita ngayayo.
A survey of 500 families found more were buying these drought and flood-resistant seeds and intercropping, which improves soil health.
Kunalidi njala chaka chimene chinji koma chaka chinochi taona kuti ndafulumiradi ndipo ndadyadi sima.
In fact, a Barclay study found families who receive Give Directly funds were more food secure than a control group, even 2 years after payment. Also, a majority used the money to build more resilient homes.
From 102 to 250 houses. Napakapanda niyo chaka chataji ndo tino kana tolena ka kunditu imfaza mbizi kana peseka menga ndi mvula ya mphamvu yomwe inabwera ayikano malata nditu pamwambapo papa kuoneka bwino.
I also find this approach good because it stimulates local economic development because they hired somebody to come and build their house.
Giving cash will not solve the climate crisis, but it means fewer people will be living on the edge of disaster. As we debate on how to direct loss and damage funding, we have a proven way to help people in poverty adapt and survive. Wealthy countries have an obligation to act. Visit givedirectly.org/climate to get involved.
The rains triggered torrential rains that led to floods, mudslides, and massive devastation in the southern part of Malawi. In just 6 days, from 12th of March 2023, the country experienced the devastating weather effects. 5 weeks down the line, this country is still in trauma, and it still leaves everyone frightened at the sound of any raindrop on their roof. As if that is not enough, the roads that were destroyed and bridges that were washed away have affected the everyday mobility of people and cutting off people from much needed support in their areas. In his remarks, the state president of the Republic of Malawi, Dr. Lazarus Chakwera, said the effects of floods and heavy rains as a result of tropical cyclone Freddy have left lots of physical damage.
The devastation is real. I'm encouraged by the resilience of the people and their determination, seeking help to be relocated, which is something that I feel as Malawians, we need to do the right thing. And even though the needs are many, they have worked on the roads, assistance is getting to where it needs to go, and we are grateful. We still need to do more than has happened.
In order to partly assess the effects of Tropical Cyclone Freddy on, among others, infrastructure, life, agriculture, and poverty, the Civil Society Network on Climate Change, CISONEC, embarked on a fact-finding documenting. CISONEC has its mission in coordinating civil society organizations and influencing a desired change in climate change and disaster risk management, related policies, practices, and attitudes through research, advocacy, model projects, networking, and capacity building. CISONEC, therefore, believed that the effects of Tropical Cyclone Freddy provide an opportunity to reflect on its mission statement. This is the area of Group Village Headman Namuyo in Blantyre Rural East. The area's roads, bridges, and sanitary infrastructure have suffered heavy damage. Many people in this area who have gathered at this school now find themselves cut off from access to health facilities, which have either been destroyed or are no longer reachable due to the cyclone impact on road networks. Blantyre Rural East comprises of people who were moved from D.A. Makata and D.A. Machinjiri to pave way for the development of Blantyre City. Most of the people in the area are farmers, and their crops have heavily been damaged, making a perspective of hunger a reality.
Umoyo wathu ndiwozunzika, umoyo wathu ndiwovutika. Tikusowekera kuti tikagwire mtengo wanji foti katundu wambiri adawonongeka ndi nyumba zimene njala yabweranso pakati pathu inali pakati kathu kale ndi kale. Choncho pobweranso pana mundu uyu ife kuno kotasauka kwambiri. Choncho pa skulu ino tinalipo anthu osachepera anthu 461, koma chifukwa chakusowabe kuti tipanga bwanji ndiye kwapezeka kuti anthu 311 amene akwanisa kati kukangoma kama kati mikukulu m'mizi mwawo koma nyumba zolongosoka. Choncho panopa tili anthu okwana 150.
This situation of roads being cut and rivers being created across the roads, making it difficult for people to access social services, which were traditionally used to gauge, are also the order of the story of the effects of Tropical Cyclone Freddy. At this Rilangwe River Bridge, people from either side are cut off and can only access the other side by carrying them on the backs of these men, who also demand 1,500 kwacha per person.
Bridge imene inamangidwa ndi yakalekale yaweresi anangopanga chikolopani nde chikolopani chimene chija lero chatopa chagumuka mmene mukuonekera ndepa kumakhala mavuto madziwo akabwera asijala kumonkhala na munthu anabweramu nde kuti ochoka asijala uku analiko asijala kunoso analiko amene amachoka asijala uku kuti abwere kunapeze thandizo panalibe amene asati machoka uku kuti tipite uku tikapeze thandizo linali za mavuto zokhazo monga mmene mukuonera anthu akuberekana.
Life for the people in this area has become hard, considering vital services they need to access at Rilangwe Training Center are far away and dangerous to reach because of cut-off bridges and roads. Member of Parliament of this area, Honorable Susan Dalama, says time has come to reflect on the quality of infrastructures that government build in the wake of effects of climate change. She proposes an inclusion of climate change in the designing and implementation of public projects such as infrastructures.
The rains were just too much and all the houses collapsed. As I speak now, people are in camps. There are several camps, not less than 11 camps or 12 camps which are here. And at each camp, there are people, not less than 500 people. As I speak now, I think not less than 1,000 houses have collapsed. So this has never happened before. It's our first time. And I'm appealing to people, well wishers, please assist these people. They are lacking food, blankets, black sheets, which can at least assist them to relocate to build another house for them to stay.
Another area that is waking up to the dire situation caused by the effects of Cyclone Freddy is here in Impemba and the area of Traditional Authority Somba in Blantyre. At the time of filming in April, life was seemingly returning to right levels of normalcy. This is Impemba bus stage, and many are plying their motorcycle business, also commonly called Gabaza. The chairperson of Motorcycle Association here at Impemba, Cedric Banda, said the entire 1 week, most of them did not ply any other activity. He said the effects of storms has now created a lot of problems, such as bad roads and difficult bridges, which are almost impossible to pass.
Yana mwende business simaenda bwino. Kifuatika nyamuka pano malo mwetu matusi hambiri kuno pamakhala ngati mtsinje yomwe nga mabridge. Mabridge amene waduka moti pano pasana kuseti. Ndekuti ndituse amene pamakhala kuti koti futa kuti nantu tikasiye tsigani. Nde business simaenda.
His college admits that life has indeed become hard considering the bad state of their roads. He says this is making many of their customers not comfortable and feel unsafe whenever using motorcycles as a means of transport.
Pamano nkhani yokuza na mundu imene wadusa bakati bazina ndikuifonera kuti maulendo amene timatha kuyenda mwina timakuza kuona kama mafuta ochepa nthawi imeneyo koma ifo yana mundu inapeza kuti ngati ine TV mapeza kuti timaona kama mafuta ochuluka ulendo uli wakumwa mona uli kunena kwa kulewa usiwochoka kwa Mpemba panopa kwati pasi kupanga project insewa umene uluka kwa busy koma insewa waunzika kwambiri neso pemphanga tona kuti apo momwe kuti mwina athandizire kuti mwina nsewa kulokozeni.
This is Impemba Dairy Bark, which aggregates milk from farmers around Impemba area. Mama Irene Moyo is the secretary of Impemba Dairy Bark Group and says the sales during the period of Storm Freddy dropped down tremendously. She observes that apart from continuous rains that were coming, roads and bridges were damaged, making it difficult for farmers.
We want to get started
to this center.
Those of us who are still outside, can we please come in and take our seats?
Anaenda movutika kuchoka makoa bwana huko nokaga manga madera amene kulibe mabridge mwina amo mnati mabridge tongo embekezera kumafanya mondo ena
Abwana kwa IT department mutati
kusera kwa manyumba awo anagwa pale zimene zo zikakhanga zinasokoneza mkaka omabwera okhanga tocheperako natsikirako paya zifuna zimene zonse.
Gertrude Pili is a milk buyer at the center and says the sales haven't yet picked up because farmers are still finding it harder to transport.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, in the interest of time, we want to get started. I think today we have a very, very important task, which will get us into finalization, sharing, as well as presenting the outcome of this symposium. So while our colleagues are working on the final touches, I'd want to request all of us to do a very quick recap. The way we are going to do this recap is that we are going to discuss that is in our tables. Any three key things that you captured for the past 2 days. Any three key things or takeaways that you feel that you have captured for the past 2 days. That is Wednesday and Thursday. So you are going to agree in your group and then someone is going to share. So we have 5 minutes to do that. And then I'll be moving around the desk to get your feedback, to get you to share what is it that you have agreed. 5 minutes starts now. Thank you. In case you have any questions, please let me know. Three minutes, 39 seconds remaining. We should be winding up now because we have exactly 41 seconds remaining. Okay, it's now time up. So I'll be moving around the groups, and then I'll be asking you to share what is it that you have discussed and agreed upon. So I'll start from here. Only 3 things.
Number one, the main key outcome for me was, in as much as we are looking for interventions from the global north, as global south countries, we also need to take an initiative to help ourselves. This is being inspired by the remarks that were shared by Her Excellency Dr. Joyce Banda on what initiatives we are making ourselves to help our dear brothers and sisters that were impacted in specifics of climate change disaster. That was one key takeaway. The second point would be about, as we seek for the operationalization of loss and damage, the greatest initiative that we can take as African countries to position ourselves is to develop institutional capacities that would position ourselves to be recipient of such. And lastly, I think it's a call to everyone to continue networking so that whatever we aspire in the organization of loss and damage funds actually materializes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let's give them a big hand. Over to you now. Who is going to share?
Thank you. Good morning. Our group, we looked at the modality to accessing loss and damage. I think the past days discussed that the modality should be simple, easier, and without a lot of bureaucracy, including the scope of utilizing this loss and damage should be prioritizing the most pressing issues in the countries. And also we talked of quantifying our efforts using evidence. So collect evidence to quantify our own efforts here in Africa or the least developed countries outside of the UNFCCC, because we know that we are really working, but that evidence is not really coming out clear, and we look like we're not doing anything, and we're just here waiting for funds that are coming from the global north. The last one is monitoring of events. As Africa, we have a capacity gap, and there is need that there is a strengthening of our own efforts here in Africa to be able to make sure that we are monitoring the events, the weather events, whether they are cyclones or any other storms or hailstorms, so that people are able to be well informed of things that are about to happen or that are to come. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So access modality, then evidence to support our cause or maybe our voice, as well as the monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so some of the things that struck us were that there is still no clear distinction between adaptation and loss and damage. So the key takeaway from there, listening to one of the presentations, is that we should consider a blended approach to this. The other thing is information in Malawi is not easily accessible, so there is gap in data. Localization of champions. The fourth point is funds delivery. So a lot of people are requesting that there should be direct transfer of funds to the affected people. There is good ideas of engaging the board. Yeah. So there were a lot of good ideas on how we are going to proceed in engaging the board. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So really interesting here. We need evidence here, They are saying that, yes, we may have data already, but only that is scattered, and then assessing that data is not all that easy. So we need to come up with ways on how best we can make the information that is already there, readily available by all the actors working on it.
Good morning, everyone. So there was a lot that came out in the discussions that we've had for the last 2 days, but I'd like to focus, or we'll rather like to focus on how we report our stories. African narratives can only remain African narratives if we are the ones telling them. We cannot allow the global north to come and shape the stories for us, right? And so we have to keep on ensuring that how the narratives are shaping up are from the communities up to the policy level at international, national levels, and so on. Also, we would also need to ensure that at policy level, when we are trickling down information at climate change processes dialogues, the communities need to get this information fast and also be able to digest them. We are the ones who are learned, we are educated, and we have the privilege of understanding both languages, and we also have the context of the communities. And so therefore, involving them in decision-making processes must also be taken into account when we are shaping our policies and our advocacy work and communicating what is happening at African level. The losses and damages are happening, but some people also don't understand the gravity of what is happening in our communities. And so we need to be able to package this information in a way that accords the importance and also acting on it as quickly as possible and according it the relevance in our conversations, in our daily conversations, in our households and all of that. The losses and damages people experiencing they are affecting people's lives. And so we can't disconnect that from what is happening in our boardrooms, and localizing those conversations is very important. And so African narratives must remain African narratives, and the solutions, as have been mentioned by many people in the room and also by Joyce Banner and other speakers, we have to ensure that that remains the case. Our stories must be told by ourselves, and our solutions must then also come from us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nothing for us without us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. In our group, our take-home message is that we love the slogan very much. That we need climate justice. We need it right now. So that is our take-home. As well as we said, we need to the loss and damage funds. We need them now, and we need them, and we need that to have to be benefit the affected people. Like 75% have to go to meet the affected communities. That's our take home as well. And the other issue is that we are saying that as African countries, we need to build a strong case to make sure that those people holding those money should give us the money as soon as possible. So those are we need the guidelines for the loss and damage funds to be as flexible as possible, because we know the guidelines are there, but they're not favorable to African countries like Malawi and our neighboring countries. So that's our take-home message. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. From now, I'll be a bit selfish. Only one, instead of sharing 3, just share 1. And you only have like 20 seconds.
That's good. So high on the list should be the discussions around how complex it is and lengthy it is to access the loss and damage funds, as well as the GCF funds a couple of years ago. So just to agree with the others, they need to collaborate as well as to ask for flexibility in accessing of these funds.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You attend.
Good morning. Our table here highlighted a few areas. Some of them have been said by others, so we'll go for those that have not been tackled. We looked around the delivery mechanisms which are not yet there, and the gathering was of the opinion, and is still of that opinion, that there should be delivery mechanisms available, and there should also be some efforts to create public awareness regarding the loss and damage. And lastly, the readiness of African countries in relation to loss and damage, like production of data, like even accountability issues, M&E, monitoring and evaluation tools, all of these are there for the fund loss and damage program or offices which to make available in connection with the African countries, so that all can be on one page. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. 20 seconds.
Yeah, good morning. My main takeaway from the 2 days meeting is the need for enhanced commitment from the political leadership. We are all aware that Africa is a country where politics do maneuver. So we said there's need for these leaders, especially in the political scenario, to make a commitment, especially in allocation of resources towards the L&D. So on this, we also looked at the localization of the fund itself to say, while we are discussing this at a national, international level, we also need to have a commitment from those that are staying in the grassroots so that the funds are used accordingly.
Thank you so much. And then 5 seconds.
Okay, thank you very much. From our group, we said we also need to draw lessons from the past fundings like Adaptation Fund and also the GCF. And from that, now we can draw out, because there were so many complexity of the fundings in terms of accessibility. So there's need to look at the ways of how best to make them accessible to even to civil society organizations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This marks the end of our recap. I know that we have 2 more groups, but you will share later. Don't worry. I think hearing from what we are sharing is an indication that we are really paying attention. I'm hopeful that by the time we're going to leave this place, it will not be the same. Of course, we'll have gained like some knowledges in relation to loss and damage. We have created some networks. Please, continue networking and discussing on loss and damage, as well as any other relevant issues that have been discussed in this room. Over to you, Julius.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Can I request all of us to stand? Mitika, this is your favorite part. Yeah, so first of all, I want to say welcome to today's meeting, and it's the last day of our engagement. We are going to close with the 2 sessions. The first one is going to be the reading out of the statement for us to adopt, and the second part will be the closing, for this event. So for the closing, we are still working on the formalities. Who from the minister is going to come and address us, but we also have already some of the speakers in here that they are going to do the closing formalities. But why you're standing is because we want to also do that power to bring out or to bring in the power that we brought in yesterday, the power of the calling for climate justice. So you will follow me when I say, what do we want? We all say climate justice. When I say, when do we want it? We say now, 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 okay? What do we want? What do we want? Tatatakweza ni manja mwamba. So we'll start again. What do we want? What do we want? When do we want it? When do we want it? Mitika, can you come and energize us with this? Mitika Mwenda, yes. Wanna join me?
Yes. So we said it with that power, which we talked about yesterday. And I'm very watchful of the people behind because I know they are always behind. We want them to lead. So let's start. What do you want? I cannot see the energy from behind. I wanted to reverberate. There are so many people outside there. They need to understand what we are doing here. What do you want? What do you want? When do you want it? When do you want it? Excellent. I think we need it now. Those are imperatives of even the loss and damage is part of climate justice. Thank you. Thank you, Julius.
Thank you. We can take a seat. We can take a seat. Thank you so much. So I want to call upon my brother, Philip Kilonzo, to come forward. So Philip is going to introduce a person who is going to lead us into, reading out the statements. And then after that, Philip is going to go through, he's going to facilitate the whole process of us adopting the statement. So I want to hand over to my brother, Philip. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Julius, and good morning once more. Good morning. Yeah, you cannot demand justice when you are not responding to greetings. I want to begin in a very empowering way, introducing the team that has been behind the process of developing this particular statement, or the statement that we are just about to hear. And then after that, I will have one of our own walk us through the statement. And then we will, in a procedural manner, invite your observations and comments on the document. As you do that, please note that the word is never enough, but there is space to accommodate views that could be considered divergent within the process. And then we will, through acclamation, adopt the statement. So we will not vote, but we'll go through an acclamation process to adopt the statement with your observations and comments on board. So that's the procedural process that we are going to undergo in this particular section. I'm buying time. I'm hoping the guys on that extreme end are able to project the document online. And at this point, let me introduce the team that has been working on this. We have from far south, Shauleno Kaugelo. Are you in the room? Just greet and wave to the people. We have Julius Chipeta. I'm trying to trace where Julius Chipeta is seated. John Chipeta, sorry. John Chipeta should be right at the front. Please greet the people. Just wave to them. Okay. And then we have Jessica Mwanzia somewhere. Good. We have Nicholas Ambuya. And then we have Obed Koringo. We have Ruth Likambale. And we have Julius Goma on that extreme end. So anywhere there could be misinterpretation of material facts, you now know the team that you need to point your finger to, because that is the team that has been behind this particular process. At this point, allow me to invite Ruth Likambale, who is our own, to walk us through the statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip.
I hope you can see me, or do I need to stand on a chair? Right, okay, thank you so much. So this is the statement that we put together as Philip has already mentioned. So we are saying, is the projection ready? Check with feedback. Wanga projector. Oh, yeah. So that's the main theme or the key message. Sorry. So they're projecting the screen. Yeah. I thank you. So the key message that we want to send through this communique is that we do not deny Africa climate finance on technicalities. So this is Africa's CSO call on highly accessible modalities for the loss and damage fund and complementarities for funding meant for adaptation, as released in Lilongwe, Malawi on March 22nd, 2024. So the Civil Society Network on Climate Change, CISONEC, TROCA, the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, PACJA, Oxfam, Concern Worldwide, Habitat for Humanity, Give Directly, Care International, Scottish Catholic International Aid Fund, SCIAF, Irish Aid, Action Aid, Pelam Association, Christian Aid, and the government of Malawi organized the African Regional Dialogue on Loss and Damage, aimed at providing a platform for African stakeholders and other global citizens to develop strategies for accelerating access to loss and damage funds in the continent. And this was done in Lilongwe, Malawi, from March 20th to 22nd, 2024. Now, drawing on IPCC ARC6 reports that assess that Africa will be impacted by climate change under all mitigation scenarios, setting a stage for agitation for accelerated adaptation and response measures on loss and damage actions to enable communities at the front line of the crisis to cope with the impacts of climate change, referencing the Adaptation Gap Report 2023 that points to the inevitability of unavoided loss and damage as underfinancing, underpreparedness, inadequate investment, and planning on climate adaptation continues to leave people exposed to full force of climate impacts without any shield, noting the growing levels of unpreparedness of communities to meet the challenges of the vicious, disruptive, and deadly climate change as temperature records toppled globally and regionally, storms, floods, heat waves, and wildfires cause devastation. Alarmed by the IPCC data that shows Africa suffered annual losses of $7 billion due to climate change between 2010 to 2019, sorry. And this figure could rise to $50 billion by 2024 under a high emission scenario. This could cause a 2 to 4% reduction in Africa's gross domestic product. Let me come again on that. This could cause a 2 to 4% reduction in Africa's gross domestic product growth per year by 2040 and a 10 to 25% reduction by 2100. This undermines the Africa's efforts to tackle hunger, poverty, and ill health, improve access to clean water and energy, among many other aspects of sustainable development. Concerned that Africa countries continue to bear the burden of loss and damage, diverting limited resources into disaster relief and recovery away from long-term development and overburdening their citizens with extra taxation measures to meet the urgent needs of survivors of extreme climate change-related events and other preceding disasters in multinational corporations continue to withhold, misapply, and misappropriate climate funds. Noting gaps in global climate response measures in fostering complementarity of mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage response measures, and lapse in global accountability actions, aware that the fund will have legal status internationally, allowing it to perform its duties, achieve its goals and objectives, and safeguard its interests. This includes the ability to make agreements, take legal actions to protect itself, and receive necessary privileges and immunities to carry out its mission independently. Noting the progress made on operationalization of the Santiago Network on Loss and Damage and its hosting through the consortium of UNDRR and UNOPS, skeptical of the potential World Bank policies constraining access to loss and damage funds to countries and communities that need it most due to World Bank policies, alive to the need for World Bank to be transparent and communicate the administrative costs for the loss and damage fund, and for this cost to be fixed and not allowed to escalate into sustainable levels as we have seen with the other funds. Interrogating the relevance and accessibility of the fund, which could be challenged as has been in case with the Adaptation Fund, the Green Climate Fund, due to the multiple layers of intermediary mechanisms in the delivery of the funds. Cautious of power symmetries in the funds board, as currently proposed to be constituted, with developed countries parties having greater power at the onset, and aware that operations of the fund is contingent on establishment of the funds board, concerned that contribution to the loss and damage fund is voluntary, and that developed country parties urge to continue to provide support and encourage other parties to provide or to continue to provide support on a voluntary basis for activities to address loss and damage, disturbed in observing that the initial pledges of $700 million to the loss and damage fund is insufficient to meet the recovery responses to a single episode of climate disaster, such as that caused by tropical cyclone Freddy in Malawi, estimated at $900 million, and is devoid of accountable mechanisms of replenishment of the fund. Concerned that many African countries will miss on opportunities for this fund, there are no clear policies on access to loss and damage funds, and evidence needed to support claims of loss and damages will be the single most challenging hurdle. Therefore, we recommend the following. A, locating the principles of climate change at the center of global response to loss and damage. Under this, we say we need to stand by the principles of climate justice, human rights, and gender equality in all climate policies and actions. 2, call for the application of the principles of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities to secure sustainable replenishment of the funds and responsive access mechanisms for communities at the front line of the climate crisis. 3, continue to advance a shared and collective accountability on part of African leadership in positioning African people above all personal and collective political and economic interests, and to hold leaders in the global north to account on delivery mechanism for financing loss and damage. 4, object to application of loans and concessional loans as a mechanism of funding losses and damages for developing and vulnerable countries, which will contribute to worsening the debt distress. 5, implement people-centered frameworks for promoting participation of frontline communities and CSOs across the program or project cycle, beyond the ineffectual observer platforms applied in other funds. 6, reject the application of intermediary mechanisms in the delivery of loss and damage funds and recommend direct interface between loss and damage funds with specific governments. B, this is on recommendations to the board on appropriate access modalities for funding on loss and damage for Africa. Under this, we're saying the Loss and Damage Fund Board should rise above politics and develop access to this fund. Apologies, let me come back to that. The Loss and Damage Fund Board should rise above politics and develop access to this fund, which will largely depend on sound and adequate operational modalities, delivery mechanisms, access modalities, financial instruments, and funding structures that are to be developed and approved by the board to facilitate adequate and timely access of the funds to vulnerable communities and countries in Africa. 2, to ensure progressive operational modalities, we call upon UNFCCC and the board of the Loss and Damage Fund to advance the participation to the greatest extent possible for African civil societies and local communities and different vulnerable groups in developing these access modalities for the Loss and Damage Fund. 3, develop and implement robust stakeholder consultation engagement strategy and convene decentralized people-centered consultation processes in Africa to ensure inclusive consultations and engagement with countries most impacted by climate change in framing the access modalities and fund delivery mechanisms on loss and damage fund. And in order to make the process relevant, meaningful, responsive, and less bureaucratic to communities and countries. 4, set aside a loss and damage fund readiness facility to support countries and communities most impacted by loss and damage to better prepare and set up agile and inclusive policy and institutional frameworks for responding to loss and damage. 5, structure the fund in a manner that advances for decentralized decisions and promote the realization for locally led climate action for greater responsiveness of climate action to those at the front line of climate crisis. 6, call for greater accountability for board members of the funds, particularly those in the North, in the exercise of collective governance for the fund to ensure it delivers to communities at the front line of climate crisis. Recommendation C, where we're doing recommendations to the board on replenishment process for the fund and long-term finance for loss and damage. Under this, we are saying, number 1, we call for urgent and full capitalization and operationalization of the loss and damage fund by delivering the existing pledges without delay and securing accountable mechanisms for replenishment of the fund in line with the Paris Agreement as opposed to current voluntary schemes. Number 2, urge the recently constituted board to urgently meet and institute measures to ensure that the fund's policies are fit for purpose, responsive to needs, and mobilize resources at scale. Number 3, call for an ambitious work plan for 2024 that includes the preparation of a long-term fundraising and resource mobilization strategy for new, additional, predictable, and adequate financial resources from public resources of funding, which are grant-based. 4, call for the long-term fundraising strategy to be complemented with a clear sub-goal for long-term funding for addressing loss and damage in the new collective quantified goal. D, recommendations to potential hosts of the loss and damage fund. That's the World Bank. We call on the World Bank to fix its ways of working and fulfill the conditions set out by parties in order to urgently deliver funds directly to the communities in need and provide a timely confirmation that it is willing and able to host the fund. 2, demand that the World Bank fast-track the design features, governance modalities, proposed activities, roles, and responsibilities of the fund as a host and trustee as laid out in the COP28 decision text. Recommendation A, demands to developed countries. We urge developed countries to be transparent and accountable in demonstrating with their contributions to the Loss and Damage Fund in line with the principle of common but differentiated responsibility and respective capabilities. One, against repackaging existing climate financing, humanitarian assistance, or ODA in the loss and damage pledges or commitments by developed countries. This fund must be new and additional resources that meet the agreed full costs of loss and damage impact risks. Recommendation F. African heads of states to provide political leadership to make loss and damage fund impactful in the continent. Under this, we're saying, we continue to push for more accountable commitment by the global leaders and to secure a firm commitment by developed countries on the mechanisms of financing loss and damage in line with the common but differentiated responsibilities and the capabilities of the Paris Agreement, away from voluntarism that characterize the fund. To also demonstrate a strong will and leadership in pursuit of accessible funding mechanism modalities for loss and damage funds, and more broadly in influencing other funding streams that are at the core of adaptation, such as the GCF, to transform their access mechanisms to promote greater adaptation for communities at the front line of crisis to address avoidable loss and damage. Number 3, we call upon African governments to enhance and hasten adaptation planning, ensuring a comprehensive ecosystem of policies, laws, programs, institutions, and regulations, taking into account the continent's exposure to multiple hazards and the need to minimize impacts of disasters associated with climate change to vulnerable people. Number 4, we urge the ECA in collaboration with the AUC to strengthen the continent's climate research capacities and capabilities to provide the evidence basis for key positions, policy and program development at national, regional, and global scales. Number 5, we call on African nations to include detailed sections on loss and damage in their next round of NDCs, including providing cost estimates where possible to drive predictable and adequate finance. Number 6, to build a strong and coherent voice at intergovernmental level, taking into account the different development stages existent across African countries. And number 7, to facilitate the development of strong information or evidence management systems. One of the ways of doing this is to take advantage of the existing African Development Bank support to digitize climate data. Recommendation G, on the nature of the fund. On this, we're saying, if emphasis that UNFCCC must operationalize a fit for purpose loss and damage fund, which is adequately resourced to address the full spectrum of loss and damage needs and is based on the equity principles of the Paris Agreement and the UNFCCC. On this, we're also saying the loss and damage fund should enable community ownership and leadership to ensure accessibility by strengthening decentralized and devolved governance mechanisms to enable grassroots community organizations to develop their own plans to utilize the funds. Number 3, we recommend a fund with an inbuilt trigger-based funding for loss and damage, which is based on reliable early warnings or predefined risk thresholds for climate-induced calamities, which can automatically trigger payments in a timely and predictable manner. Number 4, readiness support should be provided to build the capacities of the countries, communities, and civil society organizations in developing bankable projects that can ensure accessibility of the fund. Number 5, recommend a broad spectrum fund that must be dispersed in the form of grants and not loans, that provide support for responding to both economic and non-economic loss and damage associated with the adverse effects of climate change, including extreme weather events. Number 6, recommendation for a fund to provide funding for intermediate or long-term recovery, reconstruction or rehabilitation, and funding for actions that address onset events, as supporting anticipatory action, disaster response, and quick turnaround. Number 7, the loss and damage as a standard must be a direct access for all countries impacted by the extreme weather events. Number 8, a specialized window for local actors, including youth and women, in form of micro grants to directly access funding in order to ensure that funds are accessible by the most vulnerable, even in high-risk contexts where they may not be able or may not have the capacity to meet all accessibility criteria. Number 9, funding proposals must be developed in close collaboration with local actors, working government. Let me come again on that. Funding proposals must be developed in close collaboration with local actors, working government, multiple organizations representing different community interests. Basically, this is saying funding proposals must be developed in close collaboration with local actors, including government, and multiple organizations representing different community interests. So number 10, the Santiago network on loss and damage must have suitable, predictable, and sufficient resources. Those are financial, technical, and human resources to enhance capacity of countries in responding to loss and damage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Ruth deserves much more better clap than what we've just provided. And the reason as why I'm saying so is because any statement that exceeds 3 pages, I can't read it. I'll get tired. But she has managed closer to 7 pages. Why did we make it long? Just to ensure that we sufficiently and in a very holistic manner capture the near full breadth of the spirit, the letter, and the aspirations of the discussions that were happening within the room. So that is why we made it slightly longer. Again, apologies to Ruth. Ruth, I think you will deserve a break. One begins immediately after we close this conference, which will be a weekend. The rest, I know Julius will come back to see how best to reward you. I want to open another snappy session. That's snappy session because we just want to capture what we think has not been captured. It's a short moment to capture what we think has not been captured. And let's keep it simple. Let's keep it focused. I was told handouts ask questions which they have answers for. So don't ask the question, give us the recommendation. I'm opening the floor for quick inputs. When you go to the top of the document, if the person projecting can do that, you will see it bears all the institutions. Allow me to register an apology. I think I did not see the name of Save the Children within the institutions that are recognized explicitly at the onset. We will do that insertion. So it was not meant in any way to belittle your contribution or to belittle your commitment to this particular process, but it was just an oversight an omission, let me call it an omission when we're trying to capture all the institution, and it's rightfully pointed. So let's then go back to the floor for any comment. It must be a burning one, any recommendation, any element that we may have misstated so that we capture that. Over to Dr. Mithika. And as comments come from the floor, I'll request the drafting team to kindly take notes.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you for that very elaborate presentation. Mine is just to the flow and the structure with which it is going to go. First and foremost, this is very important because as a key outcome, we need to ensure that this outcome takes forward our viewpoints, our perspectives, the outcomes of this in this declaration. So when I look at it, I think you could have put it there so that we can comment.
Yeah, it's just project from the other end.
So that we can comment. Because when I look at the top, the title, to me, I think we need to rework on it. Because when just drawing my eyes, someone can put it there. If I draw my eyes into it, it is not very clear what is it. Yeah, it is not really very clear what that is. So that one, I believe, is this a declaration, a communique? So if then it is, then we need to start by the title of this would be either communique of the Third African Regional Conference on Last Damage, or if we want to call it a declaration, so it should be seen there. Then the text below actually is not very necessary also, because that could be included in the body of the whole declaration. Then we were conversing with my friend here, Nicholas, and we were asking whether we require all the logos up there. And our conclusion is, I'm talking about the logos up. Our conclusion is that we again need to ask ourselves, what are we communicating, and who is communicating, and who is the target of our communication, of our declaration. And it is not necessary to have the crowded logos up there. We recommend that first, who do we want to carry the spirit of this conference? Number one, the host is very important to have the logo there, Seasonic. And the target of that, again, is very important. The target, we brought the target host because if we wanted to go at intergovernmental space, the government of Malawi. So we'll have the logo of the government of Malawi there. Number three, so that we don't crowd, we have now at continental level, we have now the logo of PAGJA there, so that now we have the three. The PAGJA carries the spirit of Pan-Africanism into that. So we have, so that now, if then it is other logos and we want to retain them there, we can take them down into the other, so that now that one, when looking at it, you will see that Pan-Africanism there and the partnership. Then you come to the preamble itself. The way it starts, just go there. Again, just up there, Philip, who is and just, no, I can.
It's me.
Yeah, the preamble, again, you don't start with organizations again. I think the first thing you start with, which is catchy and captivating, is you start with the subject. The subject is the conference. Number two is the objective or the vision or the goal. So the Third African Regional Conference on Loss and Damage aimed at providing a platform for stakeholders to develop strategy for accelerating access to loss and damage fund, took place, the venue, then the date. So paragraph 1 captures that. Number 2, paragraph 2 now captures who hosted. Again, it follows. The conference was hosted by Seasonic, and in fact, we were arguing whether we could start so that we give it a bigger profile, whether we can have Seasonic number 1 or PAGJA number 1, so that we can have Seasonic, the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, and the government of Malawi in partnership with the Trocare, blah, 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 other partners. That again gives us that catches the spirit of what we want to achieve in the target. Because I assume that this is targeted to African Union, to the African group of negotiators, to all other actors at Pan-African level before we take it to the next level. So that now other things, instead of talking about drawing, we talk about recalling the IPCC. You are remembering. The other one is instead of talking about referencing, there is no referencing here. We are not doing academic work. It is further recalling. We further recall the adaptation gap report. We are just reminding we are not the ones who are doing. Then all this. So there is a frame with which we do. And the other thing we have noticed is that there are a lot of repetitions, which we need also to do. And particularly the third part of it, it is envisaging a operationalization of the fund. In fact, in some parts, it is talking about the fund should do. The fund was already established and operationalized in Dubai. So we need really to capture that, and what is left is and even the institution which is now even hosting the fund is there, World Bank. So what do we want with the World Bank? All those things should be found there. The other very important point, which as I finish, which you need to notice, is that there is a new development for the hosting of the Santiago network. The day before yesterday, that is on 19th, there was a meeting in Geneva. And this meeting was very significant. In fact, it has already made a decision that the Santiago network is going to be hosted in Geneva, in Switzerland, rather than in Nairobi. So this is a very significant development, which we need. There are Masquerades I've seen calling themselves the undismayed from Africa, who are saying that they are there. So this meeting actually is the meeting which can even make a declaration and condemn this with the strongest term possible. This is actually the platform. So I think we need also to capture this. So what we can do about this then, we have been able now to really outline the elements plus reputations. It's not very bad because we have the meat. So it's a small team now, which is going now to sit down and polish it and make it current. And this meeting, to me, the conference is very, very timely because the statement which comes out of this should start first and foremost by condemning the UN, the UNFCCC, and the conspiracy by the North of denying Nairobi the opportunity to host it because the UNDRR, which is the host, is supposed to be, so that was natural, that it was supposed to be based in Nairobi. How this has been dismantled, because it's a fund then goes to an industrialized countries, no one knows. And we need actually to say that this is unacceptable, and we call for this to be reversed without any condition. So those are some of the views which we will discuss with the team which is going to be appointed to rework it, but I'm available to be there so that we can sharpen this document. This is going to be very significant for us, particularly out of the Switzerland meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mithika, and also bringing us to speed on the new developments that have taken place. I want to cross over to Dr. Murombezi. I can see his hand is up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I would also like to acknowledge the effort of the team which put this statement together. Just following on what Mithika has said, in fact, starting from where Mitika finished, which is a proposal to condemn the UNFCCC for making a decision to host the fund in the Santiago network in Geneva. And speaking from the UN, of course, I cannot be party to condemning my own organization, right? But just to say, Mitika, that the decision making, the UNFCCC is a secretariat and has absolutely no executive decision making powers at all. Rather, that decision should be condemned to the extent that it reflects the enormous power imbalance between northern countries and southern countries. And so we need to be very careful that we are condemning the correct or the incorrect decision-making process. But that's just my starting point. My real point is that, so yes, I agree with a lot of what, of the other points that were raised by Mitika there regarding, the level of detail, the repetitiveness, and there will be a need for some editorial work. It's still an excellent statement in my view. However, since we are civil society meeting in an African context and hosted by an African member state, I think it is important to mention two things somewhere in that document. The first is that we know that African countries are beginning to develop their long-term low emissions development strategies. So we should call on member states to ensure that loss and damage is a key component of those long-term emissions development strategies, but also that it is based on data and appropriate analytics. And secondly also, and I'm sure Leah will repeat this, the African member states have already approved the Africa Climate Change and Resilient Development Strategy and Implementation Plan, which has in fact a lot of detail on loss and damage, on implementation modalities, on finance and so on. It is critical that we reference these existing continental and national frameworks and locate our decisions, our recommendations, our observations within those contexts. And finally, I think that the IPCC references that we make there, I would go beyond just recalling IPCC, because like we said, a lot of the IPCC science already excludes Africa. So much of the data that we are in fact quoting in the IPCC is from a global, very general perspective, and is not fully reflective of African science, African research, African data. And so when we reference IPCC, I think we should also qualify that with a call for further investment in generating data and other information that would support decision-making in Africa. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Murobezi, for those succinct observation and also exonerating your institution from blame. We will be kind when we are reviewing. Thank you. Any other comment, observation? Right at the back, one more.
Mine is very short. I've noticed that in the text, I think on the last paragraph of page 2, it's written $900 instead of 900 million US. So that might actually send a different message altogether on the effect of Cyclone Freddy for Malawi. Thank you.
Appreciated for that particular observation. Last one at the extreme, no, two more, extreme corner and in the front. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to the team for putting together such a strong communique. You must have been up till midnight, 1 o'clock yesterday morning, working on it. It's a really strong document. I think, like my colleagues have said, it probably needs a bit of editing just to make it reading very strong. but the key, it reflects the discussions of what has happened over the last 2 days. So well done. My main point would be that this is the third African regional dialogue on loss and damage. I think it is important that we reflect on the communique we did last year within the preamble to look at, okay, what has happened since that communique happened, and how maybe to highlight any successes that there were as a result of our advocacy in relation to that. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for building that historical profile. Last one at the corner.
Thank you so much. Quite an elaborate statement, but I have noted one thing that I wanted to submit for consideration on the nature of fund. There is a statement, I think the first recommendation on the nature of fund, where we're talking about the loss and damage needs according to the Paris Agreement. I wanted to suggest, if it's possible, to put in brackets to prioritize these needs that we are talking about. I am speaking this because I've also seen another recommendation where government are asked to provide specific things that they want to do. And in our current state, when we're looking at loss and damage, if you look at the post-disaster needs assessment, you find that these are mainly public infrastructures. So those are the things that government will be able to submit. But I wanted to suggest that on these needs, we can then prioritize those things that affect the people, issues of housing or other issues that we want to be prioritized that can be part of this funding. And like if we leave it that way, an individual, a farmer who are in the villages who are most affected by these cyclones and the disasters, their issues will not be represented. So if we could prioritize maybe 3 or 5 things very clear that would want these things to be prioritized, I think that would be better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other ants? I think the more we do the round, the more the ants increase. So I think we will pick those 3 and we cap it there. Just make it super sharp.
Yeah, just quick ones. In the opening paragraph, I think you have left out some key players. Save the Children is not featured in there. We sent our input towards the communique. Child language again is missing. We have submitted that input already. So perhaps if that could be considered. But also I think the issues came from the breakaway sessions where women, youth, and children were specifically singled out in as far as ensuring that child rights and women's rights should be part of the guiding, principles in as far as loss and damage fund mechanisms are concerned. So I wanted to raise those ones. I'll still resubmit for consolidation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It came in a bit late, actually, when I was seeing that we were almost at an advanced stage. So apologies for that. And I indeed registered the element of our mission on Save the Children. Thanks. There is another.
All right. Thank you for recognizing me. I feel I support the first contributor who talked about the arrangement of the statement. Again, I feel issues of coordination are not coming strong. We need to go upon the African governments and also the development partners, including the civil society organizations, to be more coordinated when it comes to investment towards loss and damage. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to point out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The last ant.
Ntsukuma kwambiri ine ndi Christopher Haji kwambiri makufuna ningoyamikira kwambiri chifukwa cha mkumano uwu komanso mapulani anga ongoonjezera pa zimene zafotokozedwa mu statement zija ndimangofuna ndinene pa nkhani ya climate justice kuti takambirana muno nkhani ya climate justice. Ndimati ndipemphe kuti pamene thumba iliro la loss and damage latheka, climate justice chikhale chinthu choyambirira. Chifukwa chonena kuti ifeyo anthu amene timakhala kumuzi, ma project onse amene amapangidwa implement ndi ma organization osiyanasiyana, onse aja akamamalizika amakathera kwa ife anthu akumuzi. Ndiye pamafunikira kwambiri climate justice ija ioneke, chifukwa mukayang'ana lero zinthu zambiri kumuzi kuja, ngakhale mabungwe ochuluka akhala kufikako koma sizikuoneka kuti zioneke kuti pa ground pali chani. Chifukwa chonena kuti climate justice palibe. Ndiye ndimafuna ndipemphe kuti pamene tikutuluka mchipinda chino, pamene ndondomeko zakhozedwa chonchi, ndondomeko zonse zikaoneke bwinobwino. Zikomo kwambiri.
Well, anyone willing to translate for us to be on board? I love what you are saying because you are saying it with a lot of passion. Somebody from Malawi to.
So basically what he's saying is that whatever we agree here, the recommendation that these issues have to trickle down at the community level, because whatever we do here, the end user, the end beneficiary is the community people. So these have to come down to the community people to benefit from this one. So that's basically what he was talking about. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes, and very important. Whatever we are doing here must, and whatever we are farming to must bring serious awakening at the grassroots level and build a movement towards the transformation and the change that we want to see. My brother, is it extra burning? So we'll lose friendship. Oh, Prof. Wait for the microphone, it will reach you. You become young, so I don't know what happened between yesterday and today. That's why I was trying to. No, I need to spare that for
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think the other element of his statement is actually accountability, because he talked about many of us working on the ground. So in terms of the work that we're doing, there has to be value for money for the communities that are the beneficiaries.
Absolutely, yes, and thank you so much. Value for money has been quite an interesting framework, but I want to, before I end this particular session, take it to the drafting team. Any member of the drafting team who has 1 or 2 comments? Just one single member. The absence, again, is a clear indication of our commitment to improve the document pursuant your recommendations and your submission. And you should be having the document by close of the day with those inputs well incorporated. Again, sincere appreciation for your noble comments, and also appreciation to the team that has actually been drafting the document for working over drafts, for their own contestations inside the document and outside the document, and also for the guidance that we've been provided with. Should I, at this particular point, and with all your inputs incorporated, and by show of acclamation, say that the document is adopted? Without opening, I'm not allowing us to open the conference. We could reopen the conference.
So basically what I have noted that there's a lot of NGO, international NGO in the document. You are forgetting some of us who are very local. So if you have a certain line where you talk about us that we adopt it's very good. We own the document as well as the local people.
Great.
So find a place where you can fix us that we attended the conference and we agree with you.
Great.
Thank you.
We'll do that acknowledgement, and CISONEC will enable us compile that and have all that on board. So can we say the documents with the observations, with comments, with is adopted by show of hands? Amendments. Yes, with amendments. Can we, by show of hands? If you don't lift your hands, we'll assume the document is not adopted. Beautiful. I think we make the majority, and therefore we can impose our collective will together. Collective will together. I'm not imposing it on you, but we can collectively impose that will. Let me invite Julius to guide us on the next steps. Thank you so much.
You need to get your computer, Philip. Is this, whose computer is this? Oh, is Ruth? Okay, that's fine. For Ruth. So, yeah, thank you, colleagues, for that overwhelming consensus. It's beyond 2/3 majority. So, our commitment from the team is just to rework on whatever has been said, incorporate, and then send it back as a final document. Otherwise, can we clap hands for ourselves for adopting this statement? And you should be very proud because this statement, once it's being circulated or being used, you were part of the development of the same. So I think we cannot be as proud as today because we are part of this whole gathering. Otherwise, I want to move to the next session of this program, which is now the closing. And with that, I want to call our esteemed moderator, Kate, in front so that you can lead us into this. So let's give him a round of applause as he comes forward.
Yeah.
He's gonna make, so we try to. I see.
Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor once again to stand before you. And as per protocol, allow me to make these acknowledgements. Officials from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Climate Change, Madam Lucy Mtilatila, Director of the Department for Climate Change and Meteorological Services, officials from the Environmental Affairs Department, Dr. Mitika Mwenda, Executive Director of the Pan-African Climate Justice Africa, PACJA, Dr. James Murombezi, Coordinator, African Climate Policy Center, Lorraine Carey, Executive Director, Scottish Catholic International Aid Fund, Ms. Wamuyu Manyara, Country Director, TROCA, Mr. Gift Numeri, Mr. Connor Kelly, and all board subcommittee members and CISONEC members, Mr. Julius Ngoma, National Coordinator for CISONEC, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. The past 2.5 days, I'm sure, have been nothing but exciting and fulfilling. And seeing that we've come up with all these tremendous recommendations can only seal the commitment that all of you have shown in this conference. It's been a wonder and a delight, and I'm sure we can give a round of applause to ourselves once again. We have done justice and indeed great work. My humble duty this morning is to take us through the closing ceremony, just as I was also honored to take us through the opening. Today, closing commitments on the loss and damage action will be opened by Mr. Milton Luhanga, CISONEC board member, and who is going to give his remarks. After Mr. Luhanga, Dr. Mitika Mwenda, Executive Director, PACJA, will also give his remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause as Mr. Milton Luhanga makes his way.
officials from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Climate Change, Madam Lucy Mtiratira, Director of Department of Climate Change and Meteorological Services, officials from the Environmental Affairs Department, Dr. Mitika Mwenda, Executive Director of Pakija, Dr. James Mrombezi, Coordinator, African Climate Policy Center, Doreen Curry, Executive Director, Scottish Catholic International Aid Fund, Ms. Wamuyu Manyara, Country Director, Troka, Mr. Gift Numeri, Mr. Kona Kerry, and all board members of CISONEC, Mr. Julius Ngoma, National Coordinator for Civil Society Network on Climate Change, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's still good morning. Good morning, all. Allow me to extend a heartfelt appreciation to the Ministry of for Climate Change and Natural Resources for prioritizing this conference over other equally important commitments. Let me also acknowledge the support from the Office of the former President, who is also the Ambassador of Goodwill on Loss and Damage, for gracing the opening with the keynote speech. Ladies and gentlemen, we were privileged to have with us Honorable Dr. Michael Husi, Minister for Climate Change and Natural Resources, during the opening. Dr. Husi's steadfast leadership and vision have propelled Malawi forward in its effort to build climate resilience and sustainability. Under his guidance, Malawi has achieved significant milestones, including notable successes at COP28, which have positioned our nation as a key partner in the global fight against climate change. I know he's not here, but we can clap hands for him. My deepest gratitude to you all participants who attended the conference, both physically and online, for the fruitful 3 days of the conference. You have made valuable contributions to all the dialogue sessions. Your insights, experiences, and dedication have enriched our discussions and propelled us forward in our collective pursuit of addressing loss and damage due to climate change. Before I continue, it is important that we commend the dedicated individuals who have worked tirelessly behind the scenes to bring this significant event to fruition. I extend our sincere thanks to the Secretariat and the organizing team for their unwavering commitment during planning, implementation of this African Regional Dialogue on Loss and Damage. And at this point, probably I'll pause and ask the organizing team to stand again and that we give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. You have done us, Julius and your team, you have done us real pride. Their efforts have not only ensured the smooth execution of this gathering, but have also provided a platform for people from diverse backgrounds across the continent who came together and engaged in critical discussions on this pressing matter. Their dedication to advancing the dialogue on climate change and fostering collaboration underscores the importance of collective action in addressing the challenges we face. Today marks a crucial moment as we conclude the dialogue we started on the 20th of March to date. We have confronted the escalating impacts of climate change and recognized the profound loss and damage experienced by communities across our continent. From the loss of lives and livelihoods to the erosion of cultural heritage, the toll of climate-induced disasters is staggering and unjust. Despite contributing minimal to global greenhouse gas emissions, Africa finds itself on the front lines of this crisis, facing unprecedented challenges that threaten our very existence. But amidst the issues that have been discussed, the dialogue has highlighted challenges in assessing the loss and damage funds and propose the strategies for addressing the challenges. Let us remember that the challenges posed by climate change are immense, but they are not insurmountable. It is therefore only through collaboration, solidarity, and shared determination that we can effectively tackle these challenges. Together, we can continue to work together across sectors, borders, and disciplines to amplify our impact and drive meaningful change and continue amplifying the voices of those most affected, and to forge a collective African narrative on loss and damage. We must advocate for robust financing mechanism and inclusive decision-making processes that prioritize the needs of our most vulnerable communities. And it's pleasing that amongst us, we have people that are directly affected by various disasters amidst us. So together, the voice that we are projecting will probably be well held. As we bring this dialogue to a close, let us reaffirm our commitment to taking concrete actions in our respective spheres of influence, whether through policy advocacy, community mobilization, or innovative projects. Each of us has a role to play in mitigating the impacts of climate change and supporting those most affected by its consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, the Santiago Network on Loss and Damage offers a promising avenue for mobilizing technical assistance, but it is imperative that it reflects the realities on the ground and is driven by the priorities of the developing nations. Our collective efforts must be rooted in principles of justice and equity, recognizing that the burden of climate change falls disproportionately on those least responsible for its causes. In closing, let us remember that while the road ahead may be challenging, it is also filled with opportunity. Together, let us seize this opportunity to shape a brighter, more resilient future for generations to come. Thank you, and may our collective efforts pave the way for a world where no one is left behind in the face of climate change. Thank you once again to our esteemed guests for gracing us with your presence, and let us rise to the challenge before us, united in our commitment to a better, more sustainable world for all. I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Dr. Mwenda.
Thank you, moderator. And I want to stand by existing protocols for the interest of time. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this was a very informative meeting, a very representative meeting based on the collection of the organizations which came together to put together this very, very important conversation, which has come out with a very important declaration, which we hope is going to take this discourse forward. As this colleague who was speaking has rightly said, the challenge ahead of us is enormous. So first, may I acknowledge the co-organizers of this conference. First and foremost, our host, CISONEC, the government of Malawi, Trocare, Oxfam, Concern Worldwide, Habitat for Humanity, Give Directly, Care International, Scottish Catholic International Infant, Irish Ind, Action Ind, Pelham Association, Christian Ind, and also the members of CISONEC, who I know I cannot mention by name. Please accept my appreciation and our appreciation for you being here, because networks are meant from the people. I'm not going to repeat what has been said by my colleague or what we have repeated since we came here. But I want to really mention this latest development, which has really irked us. In Dubai, and after the establishment of the fund, there was to be established the Santiago Network for loss and damage. And the work of the Santiago Network was to manage the day-to-day operations. I mean, the secretariat, which was to be established, is to establish day-to-day operations of the network, building and managing the network of members, bodies, networks, and ensuring coordination of the network to UNFCCC bodies, and receiving, assessing, and managing the process of responding to the request from member countries. So this is like the nucleus of taking the progress of the loss and damage forward. And learning from what has happened in the previous funds. This is the platform which we envisioned that would be hosted by a developing country or a country with embodies the challenges associated with the loss and damage. And so
the technical two organizations of the UN were mandated to do the assessment and they come up with a recommendation on what could constitute that hosting, the host. They even proposed the secretariat and how many people would be at that secretariat. Then the methodology. Then even, you see, assessment criteria, score criteria, compilation of a short list of even countries which we wanted to host this. And when they embarked on the assessment, many countries expressed their interest. And using the criteria, which is very long, a number of locations were selected. And I want to list them so that, because this is the only, leave alone those who issue statement. We are now talking because we are the victims. Here are the victims, practitioners, and this is the most important meeting to respond to what has happened in Geneva. 5 locations were selected for shortlist. 1, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. 2, Bonn, Germany. 3, Brussels, Belgium. 4, Geneva, Switzerland. And 5, Nairobi, Kenya. There were a lot of discussions on that. They even assessed operational cost, operational efficiency, time zones, security, stability, environmental impact, accessibility, access to healthcare and education, infrastructure, and everything. Eventually, they came up with the assessment, and let me surprise you. So they assessed location, operational efficiency, scorecard, other score factors, and then out of everything was out of 5. So here was the results. Number 1, Nairobi, Kenya scored 4.1 out of 5. Number 2, Bonn, Germany scored 3.85 out of 5. Geneva, Switzerland scored 3.75 out of 5. Brussels, Belgium scored 3.75. Addis Ababa, Ethiopia scored 3.25. So this was a technical report, ladies and gentlemen. And based on this technical report, Nairobi, Kenya was identified as the optimal location for the Santiago Network Secretariat head office. It offers all what is required. Strong host government relations, including an existing UNOPS service level agreement with the union for the provision of host country services under UNEP headquarters agreement in Nairobi. Nairobi also was seen to provide maximum time zone coverage to offer a stronger support and collaboration with the network, UNFCCC, and developing countries. It is a co-location with the UN agencies, funds and programs, including UN headquarters in Africa Union, the only UN center hosted by a developing country across the world is only Nairobi. It hosts UNEP and the UN Habitat. Its co-location with UNDRR, Regional Office for Africa, UNOPS, Africa Regional Office, Kenya Multi-Country Office, and the competitive operation cost when compared with other shortlisted locations. But ladies and gentlemen, The committee and advisory committee goes, sits in Geneva, and overrules a technical report, recommendations, and it does not even pick number 2. It picks number 3, Geneva. Is that acceptable? Is it acceptable? So we want to condemn with the strongest terms possible the decision of this technical advisory committee sitting in Geneva and the call for the UN and the call for UNFCCC to ignore that and stand with the report of this technical committee without any condition. Do we agree on that? Should that be a declaration for this meeting? Let us see by the show of hands, so that they are not going to say it is Mithika who said this. Let us, what do you want? No, shout it very well so that they can hear, because they should go to hear so that they hear. We have rejected the recommendation and the decision of that committee. What do you want? What do you want it? So we have rejected that in totality, and we are going, that will be the number 1 in our declaration, that we have rejected that decision. We have been taken for a ride for a very long time. We cannot accept, despite the fact that Geneva has the government of Switzerland has capacity to fund, because that is how they took even the Green Climate Fund in Songdo. That is how they took other funds, because they say Africa do not have money. It is not our responsibility. We want this to stand. And we want to urge our African group of negotiators. We want them to shout. We want our leaders, the African Union, to shout against this. We want the voice from the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment. And we want to urge the coordinator of the Committee of Heads of States and the Government on Climate Change. We are going to write a protest letter to him, His Excellency, President Ruto, to take note of this and ensure that this is reversed soonest possible. Africa is not going to allow to be taken for a ride any longer. And we are the people. Are we the people? Thank you very much, ladies. I'm not going to talk more. I think I want to applaud all of you and celebrate all of you, but we have to remain steadfast. The journey is rough. It has boulders of rocks. It is full of thorns. It is full of, snakes. It is full of crocodiles. The mountains and the valleys to cross are so huge. It is not easy. So let us start the journey here. Thank you very much for your commitment, for your resilience, and your steadfastness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mithika Mwenda. Very passionate and indeed stirring the anger in us, just as the former president, Her Excellency, Dr. Joyce Banda, in her opening remarks, she said she wants us to get angry. And I'm sure as we get out of here, we are all stirred and angered with the situation. Going on with our program, ladies and gentlemen, joining us online is Lorraine Carey, Executive Director, Scottish Catholic International Aid Fund. She will also make her remarks online. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and it's a great privilege to be with you here today. Thanks and well done to CISINEC and PACHA and all the partners for organising such an important but powerful event. It's very appropriate the event's taking place in Malawi, knowing how strongly loss and damage has been felt there with all the recent cyclones. But it's also very important to remember that this event is for Africa and for the entire world. And as what comes into this communique is relevant to everyone suffering from climate change globally. We've been very happy as SCIAF to partner with CISINEC and Procare Malawi and many local partners to implement some loss and damage projects supported by the Scottish Government. What these projects have underlined is the extent of the need, which is huge, and the communities are really suffering at the grassroots level. Therefore, we need the Global Loss and Damage Fund to be urgently up and running so that those communities can receive that money. This conference has been so valuable in coming together and where you share your ideas, your experiences, but more importantly, these strong recommendations which I've been hearing. And now is the time to act. So the communique will be very important, a very important tool in putting your demands to world leaders for action. So thank you for all your passion, your efforts, for putting this communique together. It's going to be a really, really important tool to continue the fight against climate and to attain climate justice. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. Now we'll hear from Dr. James Murombezi, Coordinator, African Climate Policy Center. He will also give his closing commitments on loss and damage action.
Thank you, moderator. And good morning once again, distinguished colleagues. All protocols observed. I have a long list of people to recognize. But first, to recognize that loss and damage is indeed an issue of utmost urgency. It's a challenge that we are facing today, that we have been facing for years now. But there's a contradiction in the climate change narrative. Many of our focus, many of our predictions are very long term. If you read any of the IPCC assessment reports, they talk about what is going to happen to the climate system by 2050, by 2100. We are working towards ensuring that we do not go beyond the 1.5 degrees guardrail by 2100, by the end of the century. This is the science, and this is how predictions are made. But this does not always coincide with the policy-making process. No government is making policies for 2100, right? A government's lifespan is typically 5 years. So a decision maker is making decisions that are going to be valid, that they have control over for the next 5 years. But this conference actually demonstrated for us, for everyone here, that loss and damage is not something that is going to happen by 2100. It is a reality already today. It was a reality years ago. And one of the most important takeaways for me from this meeting is the need to ensure that we align policy making on loss and damage with the urgency of the challenge that we are facing. My second takeaway from this conference is that there are several ambiguities in the loss and damage narrative itself. And we recognized a lot of these ambiguities in this meeting. Who is responsible for loss and damage? Who pays? What is the quantum of damages and how is it determined? Who benefits? How are beneficiaries defined? And so on, and so on. And I think a most important outcome of this meeting is going to be a contribution, even if it is not yet conclusive, but an important contribution to addressing some of these outstanding ambiguities. And just as an aside, to also note that there are other processes that are happening which demonstrate the urgency of loss and damage, but which also demonstrate the need for clarity in the legal context, in the policy frameworks, in the UNFCCC process itself. One of the most significant for me recent efforts is that Vanuatu, the small island of Vanuatu, which is in fact the small island which actually initiated the debate, the discussion on loss and damage because of the threat of sea level rise to that state. In 2023, Vanuatu requested the UN General Assembly to take a case on loss and damage to the International Court of Justice. Vanuatu requested the General Assembly to basically clarify with the International Court of Justice two questions. The first question is that what are the obligations of states under international law to ensure the protection of the climate system and other parts of the environment from anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions for states and for present and future generations? The responsibility question: who is responsible for causing loss and damage? The second question that Vanuatu requested clarification on was, what are the legal consequences under these obligations for states where they, by their acts and omissions, have caused significant damage to the climate system and other parts of the environment? So just two questions: responsibility and consequences. Now, the UN General Assembly in February 2024, very recently, submitted these questions to the International Court of Justice. The International Court of Justice has undertaken to start consultations on responding to these questions and to have their opinion finalized by 2025. We all know the legal process is a long time, but I think that although the opinion, the EICJ can only express an opinion, they cannot in fact issue an enforceable judgment. But that opinion is going to be very significant in helping us to resolve many of the questions we have been asking in this meeting. So that was an aside. But coming back to the meeting that we are having for the last 3 days, the African Climate Policy Center of the UN Economic Commission for Africa would like to restate our commitment to supporting African member states, African civil society, and other stakeholders in the process of resolving the challenges of loss and damage, including the challenges of accessing the fund which has been set up. Our contribution, as always, is going to be in providing data and technical analysis, modeling the impacts of climate change, projecting those impacts, and perhaps developing projections that are within the policy timescales, but also capacity building. We have a long-standing partnership with the African civil society through the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, and we would like to rededicate our commitment to continuing with that partnership. We are already making plans to do joint work on loss and damage in the coming weeks with PAGJA, and I hope that we will be able to see many of you participating in that work, including in conferences, on regional conferences on sustainable development. We also work towards ensuring that the voices of African civil society are considered in global decision-making processes, and we will continue through our partnership with PAGJA and also with other African civil society to implement that commitment and responsibility. With that, colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like once again to congratulate you on a very productive meeting and to express my expectation that the outcome document of this meeting is going to become an important and significant part of discussions and policy development going forward. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doc. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome to the podium Mr. Timothy Sandra, the Executive Assistant to the former President, Dr. Joyce Banda, for his remarks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me stand on the existing protocols for the sake of time. I bring you greetings from Her Excellency following this very important meeting. We had been following the discussions after the opening ceremony, and there was a very good meeting last night when leadership of the conference briefed Her Excellency on the progress made and the work going forward. There are a few developments that have arisen since last night meeting that I will have to first brief Dr. Mitika and the leadership on the assignments that the leadership left with Her Excellency. Suffice to add that there's good progress made. We should be going the right direction. What is key, as Her Excellency has mentioned, and in the meeting, is to make sure that there is a consolidated voice and a coordination, given the recent responsibilities that have been given to her, both locally and internationally. But for her to be a good ambassador for this house and for this nation and Africa, she will basically rely on how best we coordinate, the brevity that we bring into the messaging, and how best we use the spaces available. So there is that commitment from Her Excellency, from the thorough side of the government, to engage both the civil society and the government machinery to make sure that African voice is heard. As she did expound on that day, her position as regards loss and damage, and all issues to do with climate change, and how best to move forward. I looked at the outcome document. I was at the back there listening to the initial presentation and the comments that came through. I think we, as adopted with amendments, we should be on the right path to make sure that African voice is heard. COP29 provides an opportunity for us to keep the voice louder, but not in a more organized way. So far, the commitments and the strategies and the way to do it, as briefed to Her Excellency last night by the leadership, is the best way to go. And herself as an activist before going into politics, she says the best way to make an argument is not to be the loudest, but how smart you become to do the work. So far, we seem to be on the same page with CISONEC, PACJA, and all interested parties. So as the meeting comes to an end, as the outcome document is, and as we continue to discuss, I would like to commend the delegates for the deliberations so far. And we believe it will be with the anger that we have going forward, the anger that will not cause chaos, but the anger that will bring happiness to humanity. I believe we have a responsibility, and I'm pleased to see that most of the delegates to this meeting are youthful. Whether I'm part of the youthful age, it's debatable, but I see a lot of young ones in here, which is been somehow a missing link in most of our activism, climate justice as one of them. It has always been like not speaking to each other, but talking to some group. But when we see that the young ones, some of us, the youthful ones, are up in this fight, it brings hope that when the the bigger Kilonzos exit, the smaller Kalonzos will be taking up their place. And here in Malawi, we need more of that. I think the loss and damage and the effects of climate change are there for us to see. It is the youthful ones that were very active when Cyclone Freddy hit. So many good stories that came throughout the country of how the youthful ones organized themselves organically outside the government system to come in and offer help to our fellow Malawians. It was a relief, but we can't just stop at relief. We have to get organized and look at the cause of what brought us there. In so doing, I think we'll have a more coordinated effort and a more organized voice in terms of how do we deal with climate change, how do we attain climate justice, and how do we make sure that we leave a community, a world better for generations to come. Let me therefore thank you all for participating in this, and as the outcome document comes and the responsibilities and the requests comes to Her Excellency's office, we shall do our part to make sure that CISONEC and civil society voice in Malawi and across Africa gains and takes their rightful role in the fight against climate justice and climate change and attaining climate justice in Malawi and around the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sandram. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, last but not least, allow me to invite to the podium Dr. Lucy Mtilatila, Director of Climate Change and Meteorological Services, for her closing remarks.
Thank you very much. It's really indeed an honor here to stand before you on behalf of the Minister of Natural Resources and Climate Change, Dr. Michael Osi. So let me recognize the officials from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Climate Change and also from the Environmental Affairs Department. Dr. Mitika Mwenda, Executive Director of the Pan-African Climate Justice. Dr. James Murombezi, Coordinator, African Climate Policy Center. Lorraine Carey, Executive Director, Scottish Catholic International Aid Fund. Ms. Wamuyu Manyara, Country Director, Trocare. Mr. Gift Numeri, Mr. Connor Kerry, and all board subcommittee members of CISONEC and ZONEC members. Julius Ngoma, National Coordinator for Civil Society Network of Climate Change. Mr. Timothy Sandram, Executive Assistant of the former President, His Excellency Dr. Joyce Banda. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I would like just to emphasize from what the previous speakers have already indicated, that climate action is no longer a distance horizon. It's indeed the food that we eat. It's the soil that we are tilling. It's the water that we are drinking. It's the house that we are building. That's what we need to do right now. So echoing on the climate justice, we really need it, because we all know already what is happening in our communities. I cannot emphasize much. We understand that people are still in camps. We are seeing, like, example in Malawi, where we are having like 3 failed seasons in a row. In 2022, tropical cyclone. In 2023, tropical cyclone. In 2024, dry spells. Over 50% of Malawians in southern region for sure they are suffering constantly every year. So I'm pleased that we are here discussing loss and damage. And I see the passion that every one of us here, and that gives us hope that for sure we should be able to respond to this need, which is very dear. Though sometimes it's really frustrating that we have this energy, but we don't see things moving as the way we would like them to be. Considering of the convention, the climate change convention, 29 years of discussing climate change mitigation. But what we are seeing is the emissions are still going up after 29 years. After so many protocols that we have, so many agreements that we have, but we are still seeing the emissions that are growing and growing. At the same time, we are seeing the temperatures rising. We had Kyoto Protocol. Now we have the Paris Agreement. We are in the 9th year of Paris Agreement, but the temperatures are still rising, giving a threat to the third world like us, where we are trying to develop, but we can't move because we are always a step forward and 3 steps backwards. But I would like to echo what Mr. Sandram has said, that looking at the young people in here, we have hope in you. The older ones who failed for the past 29 years, not much is moving, but we have hope in you. And I like the enthusiasm that is in here to see this going. Loss and damage is a caution for us, so that people at risk can move an inch forward. So without talking much, let me also congratulate the organizers for bringing us together here and discuss this important topic. Our sponsors, thank you so much for this effort, and we are looking forward to further collaborations. So as we are going back to our respective duty destinations, I wish you a safe journey back home. And we thank you for being with us here in Malawi. And I hope, since we are finalizing in the morning, you have an afternoon to see around what Malawi is. Otherwise, thank you very much. I would just like to conclude by saying what Desmond Tutu said, that 25 years ago would have an excuse of not doing anything on climate change, but now we have no excuse. So with these remarks, I declare this loss and damage workshop closed. Thank you very much.
Now that it's closed, do I need to say anything more? Without opening, allow me to invite Julius to please come and give some announcements before we depart. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm also not opening, but just to say a few words, I think from the organizers. Can I just request all the people that are working at Seasonic Secretariat to stand up? Everyone who works at the Seasonic Secretariat, please stand up. Colleagues, can you give him a round of applause? Yes. And this is a team that has actually helped us to put this thing together. And we don't take it for granted. Sit, please. I want to call upon my brother Philip and Charles to just also stand up. Let's also honor these guys in a special way because I think they've also been supporting throughout. They were based in Nairobi, but I think we've been talking throughout. Thank you so much. Of course, I'm forgetting one person here, Mr. Alex. Alex, are you in here? Yes, please clap hands for Alex. I think he's been also working so hard, coordinating with our colleagues in the finance to make everything else possible. I want to call upon all the members of the task force from partner organizations that were part of this. Save the Children, Action Aid, Trokra. Can you all stand up, please? Christian Aid, everyone else was in the committee for organizing this. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think it's good to acknowledge sometimes the work of the people that have been not sleeping, putting their efforts together to also support us to convene like this. And in a special way, thank you, Dr. Mitika Mwenda, for also energizing us. You want to stand up? Do you want to stand up? And get a round of applause from the... Thank you so much. We really appreciate your coming. And no, you will start another meeting. Yeah, so thank you, James Mlombezi. Thank you, Timothy, for honoring us. We were actually invited to the former president's residence yesterday. We had a chat, 3 hours. We were treated to a dinner. We don't take it for granted. We discussed a lot of things, and we are committed that we will be coming to her office to be engaging CC. So she's still our ambassador, but also she assumed a very high office in the co-presidency. So I think that's a very good opportunity for us. Otherwise, I want to say that if you were invited and you were supposed to be sorted, you should have been sorted by now. If not, let me just ask Alex to stand. Can you see Alex? If you are parked here and you are not sorted, please, Alex is there, he's going to sort you. Thank you, Alex. Can I call Goigoi to stand? You wave at the people. So if you are not sorted and you are a national participant, please go to Mr. Konje and don't come to me. I don't have anything. Go to him and he's going to address you. Yeah, otherwise, thanks to our board members who are here and board subcommittee members and all the seasonal members present and all distinguished participants for your coming. And if anything, tea and lunch will be served at 12 noon. So we can remain here, interact. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
A matter of clarification, tea is ready now, but lunch is at 12. So take note of that. Thank you.
And I just want the team of the people who are working on the communique to meet me and Philip on that table so we can close all the inputs that we are saying were being communicated here. So thank you.
Climate justice now. People gonna rise like water, turn this system round. In the voice of my great granddaughter. Climate justice now. People gonna rise like water, turn the system round.
Dzina langa ndine Alice Katumba chimene ndachokera kwa tiye Malema Musanje amene ndili local partner kwa Action. Musanje kunena zoona mchaka ndi chaka timakwezedwa pamwezizi chaka chilichonse. Ife anthu akumudzi zimatikhuza kwambiri chifukwa ngati ifeyo maloko partners ndife oyambirira amene timaona ngozi zikuchitika. Ndiponso ndife anthu amene timakhalanso okhuzidwa kapulumutsa nawo anthu amene ali akhudzidwa ndi ngozi.
My name is Yasita Kapandeza, ADC Chair in Mlauli in Ineno district. We express more of the drought in Ineno, and most of the areas we express the collapse of houses.
Dzina langa ndine Christopher Haji wapando wachitu kwa chema. Ya, pali zinthu zinaso zimene zimati madzi achakabwera osefukira. Zinthu zimene zimasokonekera zoti ngati anthu akulera timati tikalingalira timaona kuti zinthu zimene sitingati tizibwezisa. Ningoyerekeza ngati mwina munthu wapita ndi madzi wamwalira ndekuti mwaiso kuti timubwezeretse munthu amene ngakhalepo nthawi zina mwina timaona madzi akulowa mkati mwa manda mwina kufukula manda kupita ndi bokosi la maliro. Zimene zija zimakhala zoti kuti ngati manda amene akupita ku nyanja munthu yonse sizakwanitsa kubwereza kuti adzakamwikire malo amene aja kapena sizapezeka.
Around that district, most of the time, this year in floods. They express the floods, which cause a lot of damage. Damage that economic and say floods, well, and economics, we should be talking about culture. Lots of memorable places.
Maprogramu onse akuchitika mwini wake mva kumudzi ngote kuti kundilengaso kuzapezekana musiku chimene uwu chinthu chatengwa patali ndipo ndipo ndi chimene chinonga njiri yatengopambana kwambiri chifukwa yone akuti zimene nditenge kuno ndi zimene ndikafotokozera anzanga tikapita kumudzi kuti mkatikati mwa kukambirana kwathu munali izi ifenso ngati anthu akumudzi tiye tizikana nawo ni mbali pamene tikupanga maprogramu kuthandiza kuti ingwe likabwera kudera tizikhala anthu kupindula ndi project ija.
Zokambirana zimene zili mkatimu ndizofunikira kwambiri. Makamaka ifeyo mapatena tikuona kuti zitithandiza kwambiri chifukwa chani nkhani ya loss and damage zimene amene amachita loss ndi munthu wakumudzi uja amene wavutika ndi ngozi zija.
Pertaining to the loss and damage, I will sensitize the community so that we should plant more trees in our communities. We should have the modern building of the houses so that they can be very strong to avoid the wind blowing of the house and the collapsing of the houses.
First of all, I want to thank Sisonec for considering us to come to be part of this important gathering. We are learning from our friends. We are learning from Kenya, Namibia, Uganda. I also think 10 countries are here. So we are learning from them. We are sharing notes and even we are sharing content. So it's very beneficial for a local NGO like ourselves. We have with high profile people here. So we are very happy and that the information I have taken from here, it will be put in good use at way back home. So we are very happy to be part of this gathering.
This conference is organized with the aim of, trying to advocate for a fit for purpose loss and damage funds. Remember, at COP28, countries agreed to operationalize the loss and damage funds, which, of course, operationalizing is one thing, but making it work to also to support the local communities is another thing.
Ife tinakakonda kuna kuti ndalama zimene zizibwera direct kwa maloko partner.
We have to understand that living in a place
If it is man against nature, man loses. So I'm here in Blantyre, a city that has been hit by catastrophic impact of climate change. The cyclone Freddy that came rushing into this country on the 12th of March this year. Look at the rocks behind me. Look at the size of these boulders and imagine them coming through your home.
Tukanga tinabwezesa maphunziro ana mbuyo pa zinthu zimene zinachitikazi ambiri akhanga tanakhuzidwa ndi mantha ngati kungothawa ndi panopazi kumavuta kuti takupeza kanyoyo kuti tigwire tipeze chakudya cha siku ndi siku zimakhala zovuta kwambiri.
So what are the solutions? Well, we have to be aware that this is a country that struggles with electricity supply. This is a country that has just 12 to 13% connected to modern electricity. So what we need to talk about is finding alternative to fuel wood and charcoal so that people can, yes, get their cooked food as they deserve, but also not have the deforestation taking place.
There has to be a way in which the energy question is actually addressed in the resilience strategy to climate change. So this is a very clear demonstration of nature-based solutions. Very few trees planted, 90% regenerated, causing improved soil cover, and that's what reduced the flooding.
We must see climate justice. We must see climate finance. It is unacceptable that those countries that have done the very least to impact on climate change are suffering the very most. And these are the kind of elements that we from UNEP, the United Nations Environment Programme, together with our broader UN family and all development partners, will seek to find solutions to, because we cannot leave a country like Malawi to face another Freddy of this nature and impact. The country deserves support, and it deserves it now.
Ndi amene ali kufupi ku ground kumene anthu aja kuvutika. Ndi ndalama izi zikaperekedwa ku dziko la Malawi, kuperekedwa kandi kwa ma NGO siyana. Ife maloko partners tithandizika kunena kuti anthu aja athandizike chifukwa kunena chilungamo anthu aja analuza katundu tekeze Freddy wapita chaka chati. Anthu aluza katundu miyoyo koma palibe china chilichonse chimene chabwezeredwa. Manda amene anakokoloka panopo kuti kodi mmene tateremo anthu izikayika pita zikhalidwe zakhangatizo zadani zasokonekera.
We want this to be localized. Like Malawi, we should have our own country-based funding systems where even the local communities can be able to access the fund. Because those who feel the impact of the effects of climate change are the communities. Regardless of the mitigation and adaptation efforts being done, but the damage is really felt by the local communities.
So what we're trying to do here in this conference is to try and ensure that we advise governments through the board of loss and damage funds to be able to create and operationalize and manage a fund that is going to be, fit for purpose, meaning it has to deliver for countries, it has to deliver for the local communities, it has to be able to support local communities to manage the various impacts of climate change that are loss and damage in nature.
Climate change and ecocide, it's up to us, we must decide. Climate justice now. Rise like water, turn the system round. In the voice of a great granddaughter, climate justice now. We're gonna rise like water, turn the system round. In the voice of a great granddaughter. Climate justice now. We're gonna rise like water, turn the system round. In the voice of my great granddaughter, climate justice now. People gonna rise like water. Turn the system round.
Dzina langa ndine Alice Katumba chimene ndachokera kwa tiye Malema Musanje amene ndili local partner kwa Action Aid. Nsanje kunena zoona mchaka ndi chaka timaphunzidwa zawo pamodzi ndizi chaka chilichonse. Ife anthu akumudzi zimatikhudza kwambiri chifukwa ngati ifeyo maloko partners ndife oyambirira amene timaona ngozi zikuchitika. Ndiponso ndife anthu amene timakhalanso okhuzidwa pakupulumutsa nawo anthu amene ali akhudzidwa ndi ngozi.
My name is Yasita Kapaneza, ADC Chair in Mlauli in Ineno district. We express more of the drought in Ineno, and most of the areas we express the collapse of houses.
Dzina langa ndine Christopher Haji wapando kwa chema. Ya, pali zinthu zinaso zimene zimati madzi achakabwera osefukira. Zinthu zimene zimasokonekera zoti ngati anthu akulera timati tikalingalira timaona kuti zinthu zimene sitingati tizibwezesa. Tingoyerekeza ngati mwina munthu wapita ndi madzi wamalira ndekuti mwaiso kuti chimubwezeretse munthu amene ngakhalepo nthawi zina mwina timaona madzi akulowa mkati mwa manda mwina kufukula manda kupita ndi bokosi la maliro. Zimene zija zimakhala zoti kuti ngati manda amene akupita ku nyanja munthu yonse sizakwanitsa kubwereza kuti adzakamwikire malo amene achakapeza sizapezeka.
Karonga district most of the time this year in the floods. The Karonga express of floods which cause a lot of damage. Damage that economic and saving floods infrastructure well and economics we should be talking of culture and lots of memorable places.
Mapulogalamu onse akuchitika mwini wake mva kumudzi ngote kuti kundilengaso kuzapezekana mutsekulu umene uwu chinthu chatengwa patali ndipo ndikudalirika ndipo ndi chimene chinonga njiri yatengopambana kwambiri chifukwa yomwe akuti zimene nditenge kuno ndi zimene ndikafotokozera anzanga ndikuda kumudzi kuti mkatikati mwa kukambirana kwathu munali izi ifenso ngati anthu akumudzi tiye tizitengera nawo ni mbali pamene tikupanga mapulogalamu kuthandiza kuti bungwe likabwera kudera tizikhala anthu kupindula ndi projektiya.
Zokambirana zimene zili mkatimu ndizofunikira kwambiri makamaka kwa ifeyo mapatena tikuona kuti zitithandiza kwambiri chifukwa chani nkhani ya loss and damage zimene amene amachita loss ndi munthu wakumudzi uja amene wavutika ndi ngozi zija.
Pertaining to the loss and damage, I will sensitize the community so that we should plant more trees in our community. We should have the modern building of the houses so that they can be very strong to avoid the wind blowing of the house and the collapsing of the houses.
First of all, I want to thank Sisonek for considering us to come to be part of this important gathering. We are learning from our friends. We are learning from Kenya, Namibia, Uganda. Across, I think 10 countries are here. So we are learning from them. We are sharing notes and even we are sharing context. So it's very beneficial for a local NGO like ourselves. We have a high profile people here. So we are very happy and that the information I have taken from here, it will be put in good use at way back home. So we are very happy to be part of this gathering.
This conference is organized with the aim of, trying to advocate for a fit for purpose loss and damage funds. Remember, at COP28, countries agreed to operationalize the loss and damage funds, which, of course, operationalizing is one thing, but making it work to also to support the local communities is another thing.
Ife tinakakonda kuna kuti ndalama zimene zizibwera direct kwa maloko partners aja ndi amene ali kufupi ku ground kumene anthu aja akuvutika. Ndi ndalama izi zikaperekedwa ku dziko la Malawi kuperekedwa kandi kwa ma NGO osiyana ife maloko partners tithandizika kunena kuti anthu aja athandizike chifukwa kunena chilungamo anthu aja analuza katundu tekeze Fred wapita chaka chati anthu aluza katundu miyoyo koma palibe china chilichonse chimene chabwezeredwa manda amene anakokoloka panopo kuti kodi mmene tateremo anthu tizikayika kuti zikhalidwe zakhangatizo zadani zasokonekera.
We want this to be localized. Like Malawi should have our own country-based funding systems where even the local communities can be able to access the fund. Because those who feel the impact of the effects of climate change are the communities, regardless of the mitigation and adaptation efforts being done, but the damage is really felt by the local communities.
So what we're trying to do here in this conference is to try and ensure that we advise governments through the board of loss and damage funds to be able to create and operationalize and manage a fund that is going to be, fit for purpose, meaning it has to deliver for countries, it has to deliver for the local communities, it has to be able to support local communities to manage the various impacts of climate change that are loss and damage in nature.
Climate change and ecocide, it's up to us, we must decide. Climate justice now. On life like water, turn this system round. In the hot summer, late and daughter, climate justice now. People gonna rise like water, turn this system round. In the hot summer, late and daughter. Climate justice now. People gonna rise like water, turn this system round. In the voice of my great granddaughter, climate justice now. People gonna rise like water, turn this system round.
Dzina langa ndine Alice Katumba chimene ndachokera kwa tiye Malema Msanje amene ndili local partner kwa Action. Msanje kunena zoona mchaka ndi chaka timapezeka.
We are learning from them, we are sharing notes, and even we are sharing context. So it's very beneficial for a local NGO like ourselves. We have a high profile people here. So we are very happy and that the information I have taken from here, it will be put in good use at way back home. So we are very happy to be part of this gathering.
This conference is organized with the aim of, trying to advocate for a fit for purpose loss and damage funds. Remember, at COP28, countries agreed to operationalize the loss and damage funds, which, of course, operationalizing is one thing, but making it work to also to support the local communities is another thing.
Ife tinakakonda kunena kuti ndalama zimene zizibwera direct kwa maloko partners aja ndi amene ali kumfupi ku ground imene anthu aja akuvutika. Ndi ndalama izi zikaperekedwa ku dziko la Malawi kuperekedwa kandi kwa ma NGO osiyana-siyana, ife maloko partners tithandizika kunena kuti anthu aja athandizike chifukwa kunena chinengamo anthu aja analuza katundu tiyekeze fuledi wapita chaka chati. Anthu aluza katundu miyoyo koma palibe china chilichonse chimene chabwezeredwa. Manda amene anakokoloka panopo kuti kodi mmene tateremo anthu tizikayika kuti zikhalidwe zakhangatizo zadani zasokonekera.
We want this to be localized. Like Malawi should have our own country-based funding systems where